I spent my birthday alone in a hospital bed after an accident. Scrolling through Instagram, I stumbled on my sister's secret account. There they were, my parents, sister and husband laughing on a cruise ship. I called my husband and asked, "Where are you right now?" "On a business trip," he said. I smiled and whispered, "Enjoy it." The winter twilight came early in Boston. As snow began to dance on the cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill's upscale neighborhood, warm light glowed from the Montgomery family mansion. Elizabeth Montgomery returned home from work, took off her shoes at the entrance, hung up her coat, and heaved a deep sigh. There had been no progress on her promotion to partner at the architecture firm, and she was physically and mentally exhausted. "I'm home," she called out, and James's voice responded from the living room. "Welcome home, honey. How was your day?" Elizabeth entered the living room and found her husband sitting on the sofa. James set his tablet aside and smiled at Elizabeth. "I almost missed the last train again." "I'm sorry," Elizabeth said. "It's okay. I understand since I'm busy with work too." James nodded understandingly. "But don't you think you should consider slowing down a bit? Our time together is important too." Elizabeth chose her words carefully before answering. "The Hansen project is at a critical stage. It'll be wrapped up in a few months." Married for 7 years, Elizabeth and James had no children. They had both prioritized their careers, but lately James had been mentioning family time more frequently. Elizabeth also wanted to have a family, but now was a crucial turning point in her career. The next morning, Elizabeth woke up early and was preparing breakfast. Looking at the calendar, she noticed her birthday was marked for the following week. When James came downstairs, she asked, "Do you have any plans for next Friday?" James showed a troubled expression. "Oh, I have a business trip to New York that day. Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I'd do it too, link below if you're curious. It's a meeting with an important client that I can't cancel." "I'm sorry, that was your birthday, wasn't it?" Elizabeth shrugged, hiding her disappointment. "It's okay, I understand." When she checked her phone, there was a message from her sister. "How about dinner with our parents tonight?" Elizabeth replied with slight tension. "Sounds good." The usual place at 7? Catherine had once been a successful model. She still maintained her perfect appearance and showcased her beauty on social media. She always captured their parents' attention. In the evening, Elizabeth arrived at the restaurant and found her parents, and Catherine, already seated at a table. "Elizabeth, you're late," her mother Martha said, looking at her watch. "I'm sorry." "There was an unexpected problem at the construction site," Elizabeth explained as she took her seat. "You're always about work," her father Robert said with mild reproach. Catherine arrived right on time. Catherine smiled with satisfaction. She sat next to their parents, showing off a new bracelet. "Mom and Dad gave this to me last week. Isn't it lovely?" "It's very nice," Elizabeth replied kindly. A worry crossed her mind about whether her parents would remember her birthday present. During dinner, the conversation revolved around Catherine's recent activities and their parents' friends. When Elizabeth began to talk about her new project, Robert waved his hand to interrupt her. "Enough about architecture. Catherine is going to receive an award for her charity work. Listen to that." Elizabeth nodded silently, and listened to her sister's story. Though accustomed to being excluded from family conversations, she couldn't help feeling a pang in her heart. "By the way, Elizabeth," Martha suddenly asked, "is there any progress with James? I want to see my grandchildren." Elizabeth took a deep breath before answering. "We're both focusing on our careers right now. But in the future you're already 35, Martha said worriedly. "You can't wait forever." Catherine interjected, "Don't worry, Mom. Elizabeth always puts work first." Elizabeth remained silent. Despite her family's criticism and cold attitude, she continued to treat them sincerely. Every Christmas she prepared heartfelt gifts, and she organized gatherings for family anniversaries. That was her way. When she returned home, James was still up, working. Elizabeth briefly mentioned the dinner with her family, and how her parents favored Catherine as usual. "Don't mind it," James said, embracing her shoulders. "You're a wonderful architect, and I'm proud of you." Elizabeth was comforted by her husband's words. Despite her family's coldness, at least her husband supported her, she thought. Elizabeth kissed James and headed to bed to prepare for an early start tomorrow. Morning light reflected off Boston skyscrapers, and the construction site was bustling with activity. Elizabeth Montgomery, wearing a helmet, was in earnest discussion with the construction supervisor. The Hansen project had the potential to be a turning point in her career. If successful, she would certainly be promoted to partner at the firm. "I want to adjust the placement of these pillars a bit to create a more open atrium," Elizabeth explained, pointing at the blueprints. "Understood, Mrs. Montgomery. I'll give instructions for the changes right away," the construction supervisor nodded. Elizabeth smiled with satisfaction and surveyed the site. This complex was the crystallization of her talent. It embodied her philosophy of creating beautiful and functional spaces while being environmentally conscious. Her phone rang, and looking at the screen, she saw it was from the office. "Hello, this is Elizabeth." "Elizabeth, it's Roger. The client is requesting design changes. We need your response by the end of today." Her boss's voice was urgent. "I understand. I'll return right away." Elizabeth hung up and heaved a deep sigh. She called out to the construction supervisor. "I need to return to the office. But before that, I'd like to check the upper floor once more." She began climbing the scaffolding. The 5th floor of the building was still just a framework, with temporary wooden flooring. Elizabeth walked carefully, checking the sense of space. Suddenly, there was a strange sound from beneath her feet. The wooden floor creaked and cracked. "Mrs. Montgomery, be careful." The construction supervisor's warning came, but it was too late. Elizabeth felt the floor collapsing beneath her. She tried to grab onto something, but her hands caught only air. As she fell, for a brief moment, the faces of her family flashed through her mind. When she regained consciousness, Elizabeth was staring at a white ceiling. A dull pain dominated her body, especially her right leg, which hurt intensely. From around her came mechanical beeping sounds and the hurried footsteps of people. "You're awake now," came a gentle voice. Elizabeth moved her eyes and saw a nurse standing beside her bed. She wasn't wearing a nurse's cap but a modern nurse's uniform. Her name tag read, "Rebecca Martin." "Where am I?" Elizabeth's voice was hoarse. "Massachusetts General Hospital," Rebecca explained. "You had an accident at the construction site. You've broken your leg, but there's no danger to your life. You also suffered only a mild concussion to your head. You were really fortunate." Elizabeth tried to understand the situation slowly. "How long was I unconscious?" "About 2 hours," Rebecca answered while checking Elizabeth's vital signs. "We've already contacted your family, so they should be here soon." Family. That word brought Elizabeth back to reality. She searched for her smartphone. "Where's my phone?" Rebecca pointed to a small locker. "It's over there. But first, you should rest. The doctor will be here soon." After Rebecca left the room, Elizabeth reached from the bed and took her smartphone from the locker. Looking at the screen, she noticed the date. Today was her 30th birthday. An ironic smile appeared on her lips. It looked like it would be a memorable birthday indeed. She first called James. After several rings, he finally answered. "Honey, sorry. I was in a meeting. Did something happen?" Elizabeth explained in a calm voice. "There was an accident at the construction site and I'm in the hospital now." "What?" James's voice was filled with surprise. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just broke my leg, but I'll probably have to stay in the hospital for a while." "Oh, I see." James hesitated. "Actually, I have that business trip to New York starting tomorrow. Should I cancel it?" Elizabeth hesitated for a moment. "No, go ahead. It's an important meeting, right? I'll be fine." "Really?" There was relief mixed in James's voice. "You'll be okay by yourself." "Yes, don't worry." After ending the call, Elizabeth sent messages to her parents and Catherine. Her parents immediately replied, "That's terrible. But we have a bridge club tournament this weekend. We'll come see you after that." Catherine's response was, "Take care. I'm busy with charity events this week, so it'll be next week." But Elizabeth put down her phone and stared at the ceiling. On her birthday, everyone in her family said they were busy. She tried to understand. Everyone has their own life. She often prioritized work too. Still, a sense of loneliness spread deep inside her. That night, after being examined by the doctor, Elizabeth was told she would need to stay in the hospital for at least a week. The fracture was complex and would require rehabilitation. When she returned to her room, Rebecca came in with a dinner tray. "Happy birthday," Rebecca said cheerfully. On the tray was a small cupcake with a single candle. "How did you know?" Elizabeth was surprised. "It was written on your admission paperwork." Rebecca smiled. "Spending your birthday in the hospital isn't fun. But I thought this might make it a little special." Elizabeth was touched, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Rebecca." "You're welcome." Rebecca lit the candle. "Now, make a wish." Elizabeth closed her eyes and took a deep breath. What should she wish for? Health? Success? Love? She blew out the candle and gave Rebecca a grateful smile. "Will your family be coming?" Rebecca asked. "They're all busy." Elizabeth shrugged. "I understand." Rebecca gently held her hand. "I'm your assigned nurse, so call me any time if you need anything." That night, Elizabeth lay in bed, gazing at the starry sky visible through the window. Phone calls and messages from friends brightened her mood a little. However, there was no contact from her family. Several days passed, and Elizabeth was beginning to get used to the monotonous life in the hospital room. James called occasionally but said, the meetings in New York are running longer than expected, and never actually visited the hospital. Her parents and Catherine were the same. Only Rebecca was her sole comfort. How are you today? Has the pain eased? Rebecca asked cheerfully during her morning rounds. A bit? Elizabeth smiled. Thank you, Rebecca. I really appreciate your help. That's my job, Rebecca replied kindly. Besides, you're a wonderful patient. You never complain. Elizabeth laughed. Complaining won't change anything. Rebecca opened the curtains, letting the morning light into the room. The weather's nice today. You can enjoy the view from the window. Elizabeth sat on the bed and looked outside. The Boston cityscape spread out, with people going about their busy lives. She thought about her architecture firm and the site, feeling concerned. However, she had already been informed by the office that the project was progressing without problems despite her absence. Are you bored? Rebecca asked. Should I bring you some books? I'm fine. Elizabeth picked up her smartphone. With this, I won't be bored. I can read the news or check social media. Rebecca nodded. I'll come back later then. Elizabeth opened her social media app and scrolled through her feed. Posts from friends and industry news flowed by. Then, she casually opened Catherine's profile. Her sister's latest post said, busy day at the charity event, with a photo taken in a luxurious hotel banquet room. Elizabeth smiled. At least her sister wasn't lying. She scrolled further and was looking at the list of accounts Catherine was following. There, her eye caught an unfamiliar account name. It was called Cat Lifestyle. Casually, Elizabeth tapped on that account. Looking at the account's profile picture, Elizabeth gasped. It was a small thumbnail, but the smile was somehow familiar. She tapped to open the account. The profile description read, My real life and adventures, the private me I don't show to family and friends. No way, Elizabeth whispered. The account was private, but since Catherine was following it, she pressed the request button. Surprisingly, a few minutes later she received an approval notification. It was clear that Catherine wasn't checking Elizabeth's social media account closely. As she began to view the posts, Elizabeth's hand started to tremble. It was undoubtedly Catherine's secret account. Unlike her usually perfectly curated posts, these were more raw and candid. Elizabeth's eyes caught the most recent post. It was dated 3 days ago, right after her hospitalization. The photo showed Catherine, their parents, and James, smiling and toasting on the deck of a luxury cruise ship. Her husband, instead of being at important meetings in New York, was enjoying a cruise with her family. Tears fell from Elizabeth's eyes. With trembling fingers, she scrolled through other posts. There were posts showing preparations from a week ago and excitement before departure. Finally, the secret plan without Elizabeth is happening. She's always work, and doesn't understand our fun. But now we can enjoy without her. That was posted a few days before her birthday. Elizabeth felt an icy sensation enveloping her entire body. Her family and husband had planned a trip excluding her for her birthday. And even while she was hospitalized after an accident, they carried out that plan without changing it. The door opened and Rebecca came in. Mrs. Montgomery, it's time for your Medicat Ion. She cut off mid-sentence. What's wrong? Did something happen? Elizabeth managed to squeeze out words. My family is while I'm in the hospital. Rebecca approached the bed and looked at the smartphone screen. Oh no, she whispered. Elizabeth couldn't take her eyes off the screen. Catherine's post continued. James is so good at lying to Elizabeth. I laugh every time he says New York meeting. The post was accompanied by a photo of James relaxing poolside with a cocktail. His expression was more open and happy than Elizabeth had ever seen. I've been deceived for years. Elizabeth's voice was hollow. Rebecca sat next to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. Take a deep breath. This is such a shocking discovery. Elizabeth looked at older posts. There were many posts showing family-only gatherings held during her absence. While she was busy with work, her family was having fun excluding her, and James was always present at those gatherings. They don't think of me as family, Elizabeth said painfully. She picked up her phone and decided to call James. After several rings, he answered. Honey, what is it? Is there a problem? From the background, music and voices typical of a cruise ship could be heard. Elizabeth tried to maintain her composure. James, where are you right now? There was a moment of silence. Oh, I'm in New York. Just between meetings with clients, I see. Elizabeth chose her words. Is the meeting going well? Of course it's going smoothly. I'm a bit tired, but it's an important business deal. James's voice was slightly tense. I'll be back in a few days. Don't worry. Elizabeth smiled while looking out the window. Enjoy yourself. What? Enjoy yourself, she repeated in a whisper. Really, enjoy yourself. Elizabeth, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? No, I'm seeing things very clearly now. She hung up. Rebecca was watching Elizabeth intently. What are you going to do? Elizabeth put down her smartphone and took a deep breath. I don't know yet. But I don't intend to be deceived anymore. You have the right to choose, Rebecca said quietly. The right to choose your own happiness. Elizabeth nodded. Something was beginning to change in her heart. Beyond the shock and sadness, anger and determination were sprouting. For years, she had accepted her family's cold attitude and tried to understand. She thought it was because she wasn't enough, because she should try harder. But now she knew the truth. It wasn't her problem. Rebecca, could you recommend a lawyer? Elizabeth suddenly asked. A lawyer? Yes, I want to consult about divorce. Rebecca was surprised for a moment, but soon nodded understandingly. Actually, my sister specializes in family law. Would you like her contact information? Please, Elizabeth said with a determined expression. It seems like it's time to start a new life. That night, Elizabeth sat by the window, staring at the darkening Boston streets. Her heart was filled with pain and anger. But at the same time, she felt a strange sense of liberation. Years of questions, anxieties, and self-doubt suddenly became understandable. She wasn't alone. The problem wasn't within her, but within the people who should have loved her. Elizabeth looked at the cruise ship posts once more. There, she noticed that Catherine had posted another photo where she appeared alone with James. Their expressions suggested an intimacy beyond mere in-laws. Everything connected. James's late returns home, increasing business trips, his critical attitude toward her career. He had been betraying her all along. And with her sister no less. Elizabeth took a screenshot of the screen, saving the evidence. Then, she began writing an email to contact Rebecca's sister, the lawyer. On the day of her discharge, Elizabeth found Olivia Chen in the hospital lobby. Olivia, a friend since college, had rushed to her side as soon as she received Elizabeth's call. Thank you so much, Olivia. Elizabeth was embraced by her friend as she used crutches. What are you saying? Of course, Olivia said while holding her belongings. My home is always open to you. Rebecca came to say her final goodbye. Congratulations on your discharge. Don't overdo it, okay? Elizabeth took the nurse's hand. Without you, I think I would still be in darkness. Thank you so much. Rebecca smiled kindly. Were you able to contact my sister? Yes. I'm meeting her tomorrow. Elizabeth nodded. Olivia's apartment was in the Cambridge district of Boston. It was a small but comfortable space, and Elizabeth would be using the guest room as a temporary refuge. She had decided not to return to her own home. At least, not yet. I didn't need much luggage. Elizabeth indicated one suitcase and a laptop bag. I contacted my workplace directly from the hospital, and had them send what I needed. Olivia said while making tea in the kitchen. Have you heard from James? He calls and messages every day. Saying he returned from New York, Elizabeth smiled bitterly. Now he's asking, why aren't you coming home when I'm here? What did you tell him? I told him I'm staying at a friend's house for rehabilitation. Elizabeth looked at her smartphone. My parents and Catherine have also returned from the cruise finally. I got a message from my mother asking, how are you feeling? Olivia, unable to hide her anger, asked, what are you going to do? Expose everything right away? Elizabeth took a sip of tea and slowly shook her head. No, it's not time yet. First, I want to meet with the lawyer and get everything prepared. The next day, Elizabeth met with Samantha Martin, Rebecca's sister. Samantha was in her mid-40s, a lawyer with sharp eyes and a thoughtful expression. I understand your situation, Samantha said after Elizabeth had explained everything. There's sufficient evidence. The social media posts, the lies on the phone, and she hesitated a bit. The suspicions about the relationship with your sister. How should we proceed? Elizabeth asked calmly. First, let's create an inventory of assets. We'll clarify shared assets and your personal assets. Next, we'll limit James's access to accounts in your name. And Samantha looked at her intently. Are you emotionally prepared? Elizabeth took a deep breath. Yes, my 7-year marriage is over. I just want to end it in the best way possible. From that day, Elizabeth began building a new life. Even while using crutches, she returned to the architecture firm. Her colleagues had advanced the project during her absence. Hearing the news of the accident, her boss appreciated her dedication and talent, proposing her promotion to partner earlier than planned. Mrs. Montgomery, welcome back. Her boss, Roger Smith, visited her office and said, I was really worried about the accident. Regarding the partnership, I will formally propose it at next month's board meeting. Thank you, Roger. Elizabeth expressed her gratitude. 3 weeks after noticing her absence, James was showing increasing impatience. When are you coming home? He asked on the phone. Isn't it enough? I need a little more time, Elizabeth answered calmly. By the way, how was the meeting in New York? Oh, it went well. We're likely to close a big deal, James said confidently. I see. That's good, Elizabeth said while looking out the window. It's really a talent to be able to work even on a cruise ship. There was silence on the other end of the phone. What are you saying? James's voice was trembling. Did you think I wouldn't know? Elizabeth's voice was as cold as ice. Catherine's Instagram was quite revealing. I especially like the hashtag #FamilyTimeOnly. Elizabeth, listen, I can explain. Explain? 7 years of lies. Your relationship with my sister. Elizabeth tried to control her emotions. It's over, James. A week later, with Samantha's help, Elizabeth had compiled all the evidence and legal documents. She had rented a new apartment and was preparing to move out of Olivia's house. And it was time to take the final step. Elizabeth sent an email to James, her parents, and Catherine. The attachments included photos from the cruise ship, screenshots of Catherine's social media posts, and records of conversations documenting James's lies. The body of the email was brief. I will no longer be deceived. Divorce papers have already been sent to James. All communication should be through my lawyer, Elizabeth. That night James appeared at her temporary residence. Olivia didn't open the door and said through the intercom, "Go away, or I'll call the police." The next morning, Elizabeth's cell phone received angry messages from her parents. How could you embarrass the family? Bringing problems outside the home, her mother had written. There was not a word from Catherine. On the day Elizabeth moved to her new apartment, she stood on Olivia's balcony one last time, overlooking the city of Boston. Any regrets? Olivia asked, standing next to her. No, Elizabeth smiled. Rather, I think I should have done it sooner, but that too is part of my life. A few days later, she received a call from James's lawyer. He intended to contest the property division. Mr. Montgomery is demanding 70% of the shared assets, the lawyer said. Samantha responded calmly. I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable. We are prepared to detail Mr. Montgomery's infidelity in court, especially his relationship with our client's sister. The threat was effective. James softened his stance and agreed to the divorce on terms favorable to Elizabeth. One weekend, Elizabeth made a final visit to her parents' house. Martha opened the door. Her face was hard and cold. May I come in? Elizabeth asked. In the living room, Robert was reading a newspaper. He put it down when he saw his daughter. Have you come to apologize for destroying the family? He said in a harsh tone. Elizabeth stood before them, looking straight into their eyes. No. I came to tell you the truth. A real family doesn't betray each other. I've always sought your love, but now I understand. I have the right to live my own life. Martha pursed her lips. You were always selfish. No, Mother, Elizabeth said quietly. I just learned my worth. She headed for the door. Looking back, she said finally, goodbye. I hope someday you'll understand what a true family relationship means. 2 years later in Boston Spring, Elizabeth was gazing at the sparkle of the Charles River from the window of her architecture firm, Wilson Design Group. Half a year after the divorce, she had become independent and established her own company. Now with a staff of 10, she was building a reputation for sustainable architectural design. The preparations for the 04000 meeting are ready. Her assistant Jessica handed her some documents. Thank you, Elizabeth smiled. And have all the invitations for my birthday party been sent out? Yes, sent to everyone. Rebecca and Matthew have already replied that they'll attend. Elizabeth nodded with satisfaction. Her life after divorce had become richer than she had imagined. She had become close friends with the nurse Rebecca. And through that connection, she met Rebecca's brother Matthew. Matthew was a pediatrician, and his kindness and sincerity gradually healed the wounds in her heart. They had been dating for a year, and now spent most weekends together. Leaving the office, she drove to the Hope House Orphanage in East Boston. She had taken on this rebuilding project for the facility at no charge. Miss Wilson, we've been waiting. Director Harris of the orphanage greeted her. The children have been looking forward to meeting you. Elizabeth waved to the smiling children as she surveyed the new playground under construction. Her belief that family is not just about blood ties was embodied in this project. One day, a letter arrived at her office. It was from Catherine Elizabeth. I'm not asking for forgiveness. We're paying the price for our actions. James is under investigation for investment fraud and has lost his job. My modeling career is also over. Our parents lost their savings in James's investments and are now living with me. Ironically, we're now forced to consider the true meaning of family. Elizabeth placed the letter on her desk and stared out the window. She felt neither anger nor joy. She just reaffirmed that her choices had been right. That weekend, Elizabeth was having breakfast with Matthew at a small cafe in Beacon Hill. What are you thinking about? Matthew asked. I was thinking about family. Elizabeth took his hand. I think I found a true family now, not tied by blood, but relationships where we respect each other, support each other, and don't betray each other. Matthew gently squeezed her hand back. I think so too. Family is the act of choosing love and respect. On Elizabeth's birthday, her new family gathered at her apartment. Rebecca, Matthew, Olivia, and colleagues from the architecture firm. After blowing out the candles on her cake, she raised her glass. I am now surrounded by a true family. People like you, who don't betray each other, support each other, and respect each other. Blood may be the beginning of family, but it certainly doesn't define it. Matthew stood beside her and took out a small jewelry box. As the room fell silent, he knelt down. Elizabeth, will you create a new family with me? Tears welled in her eyes, and a heartfelt smile spread across her face. Yes, gladly. Her birthday was no longer a symbol of loneliness and betrayal. It had become a day of new beginnings.